The awakening signal. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cold metal surface of the Deep Space Communication Array as the first coherent signal in 3,000 years crackled through the speakers. The sound sent chills down her spine, not because it was alien, but because it was unmistakably human. After 30 centuries of silence from the colonies that had been cast out into the void, someone was finally calling home. The massive radio telescope facility in the Australian outback had been monitoring deep space for generations, hoping for this moment. Alina watched as her team of scientists scrambled around the control room, their faces lit by the glow of countless monitors displaying data streams that defied their understanding. The signal was not just a message, but a complex data package containing information that made their most advanced technology look primitive. Professor James Mitchell, the facilities senior analyst, looked up from his console with wide eyes. His hands shook as he adjusted his glasses and stared at the readouts. The mathematical patterns embedded in the transmission were beyond anything that current human science could produce. Whoever was sending this signal had advanced far beyond what Earth's civilization had achieved in the past 3 millennia. Alina activated the facility's main communication link to contact the Global Defense Council. Within minutes, military representatives and government officials were flooding into the control room. General Sarah Reynolds arrived first, her uniform crisp and her expression stern as she demanded an immediate briefing on what they had discovered. The signal originated from the edge of the galaxy, in a region that Earth's telescopes had never been able to observe clearly. The transmission contained detailed schematics for technologies that seemed impossible, including faster-than-light communication methods, gravity manipulation systems, and energy sources that could power entire star systems. More importantly, the signal carried a warning that made everyone in the room fall silent. Dr. Kevin Chang, Elena's research partner, worked frantically to decode the message's deeper layers. His expertise in xenolinguistics proved invaluable as he discovered that the transmission contained fragments of alien languages mixed with an evolved form of human communication. The senders had encountered other species during their exile and had learned things that Earth could never have imagined. The warning became clear as more of the message was decoded. An ancient alien empire known as the Devourers was moving through the galaxy, consuming entire star systems and eliminating all life in their path. The exiled human colonies had been tracking this threat for decades and had calculated that Earth would be directly in the Devourer's path within the next 2 years. Alina studied the star charts that came with the transmission and felt her blood run cold. The projected route of the alien fleet passed through dozens of inhabited systems, all of which had gone silent in recent years. The Devourers were not just conquerors, but a force of absolute destruction that left nothing behind but empty space and dead worlds. General Reynolds contacted the world's leaders as Elena's team continued to analyze the data. The transmission revealed that the exiled humans had not simply survived their banishment, but had thrived in ways that Earth's population could barely comprehend. They had encountered alien species, learned advanced technologies, and evolved their own civilization into something that surpassed their origins. The message contained personal recordings from the descendants of the original exiles. Alina listened. 2 voices that carried the genetic memory of Earth but spoke with accents and inflections that had developed over thousands of years in deep space. They called themselves the Voidborn and described their society as a fusion of human ingenuity and alien wisdom. Dr. Mitchell discovered that the transmission included detailed instructions for building advanced defensive systems. The Voidborn were not just warning Earth about the approaching threat, but were offering the technology needed to fight back. However, the defense systems required materials and energy sources that Earth did not possess in sufficient quantities. Alina realized that the message was more than a warning or an offer of help. It was a test to see if Earth's population had evolved enough to accept assistance from the children they had cast out 3,000 years ago. The original exile had been the result of fear and prejudice against genetic experimentation that had produced humans with enhanced abilities. The historical records revealed the truth that Earth's governments had hidden for millennia. The exiles had not been criminals or dissidents, but scientists and volunteers who had undergone genetic modifications to better survive in harsh environments. Earth's leaders had feared that these enhanced humans would eventually replace the natural population and had forced them to leave the planet. General Reynolds authorized the construction of the communication array described in the Voidborn transmission. The device would allow real-time communication across galactic distances and would serve as a beacon to guide the returning exiles to Earth. The project would require the cooperation of every nation on the planet and the dedication of resources. On a scale never before attempted, Alina worked around the clock with her team to verify the authenticity of the transmission. Every test confirmed that the signal was genuine and that the technology it described was functional. The Voidborn had included proof-of-concept demonstrations that Earth's scientists could replicate on a small scale, confirming the viability of their advanced systems. The world's reaction to the news was mixed. Some nations welcomed the possibility of reuniting with humanity's lost children and gaining access to their advanced technology. Others feared that the returning exiles would seek revenge for their ancient banishment and would use their superior technology to conquer Earth rather than protect it. Dr. Chang made a breakthrough when he discovered personal messages embedded within the technical data. The Voidborn leaders had included recordings specifically for Earth's scientists, explaining their history and their motivation for returning. They spoke of their love for the world that had rejected them and their determination to protect it. From the approaching threat, Alina found herself deeply moved by the recordings of Commander Marcus Chen, who appeared to be the leader of the Voidborn fleet. His words carried no bitterness about the exile, but rather a profound sadness at the separation and a desperate hope for reconciliation. He spoke of Earth as the sacred home of humanity and promised that the Voidborn would give their lives to defend it. The transmission revealed that the Voidborn had spent centuries preparing for this moment. They had explored the galaxy, allied with friendly alien species, and developed technologies specifically designed to counter the Devourer threat. Their entire civilization had been built around the goal of one day returning to protect their ancestral home. General Reynolds received confirmation that the world's governments had agreed to begin construction of the beacon array. The project would take months to complete, but the Voidborn had included specifications for temporary communication systems that could be built immediately. Earth would not have to wait in silence for their arrival. Alina watched the sun rise over the Australian desert as her team prepared to send humanity's first response to the Voidborn fleet. The message would take weeks to reach the exiles, but it would carry Earth's gratitude for the warning and its invitation for them to come home. After 3,000 years of separation, humanity was about to be reunited under the shadow of an existential threat. The signal that had awakened Earth from its isolation was more than just a communication. It was the beginning of humanity's transformation into something greater than either branch could achieve alone. The Voidborn were coming home, and with them came the promise of either salvation or the final chapter in human history. Children of the Void, The space above Earth's atmosphere rippled like water as the first void-borne ships emerged from whatever impossible dimension they used for travel. Commander Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Wanderer, and looked down at the blue and green world that his ancestors had called home. 3,000 years of exile were finally coming to an end, but the reunion would not be the celebration that anyone had hoped for. Marcus activated his personal communicator and addressed his fleet of 500 ships that had materialized around Earth in perfect formation. Each vessel bore the scars of battles fought in distant corners of the galaxy, and each crew member carried the genetic modifications that made them something more than the humans who had banished their ancestors. The Voidborn had returned, but they were no longer the same species that had left Earth so long ago. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from Earth's primary space monitoring station as readings flooded her screens with data that challenged everything she thought she knew about physics. The Voidborn ships were not just technologically advanced, but seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Their hulls flickered between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons or sensors. Captain Lisa Torres piloted her reconnaissance vessel, the Deep Explorer, through the Voidborn fleet to establish first contact. Protocourse. Her ship was one of Earth's most advanced spacecraft, but it looked like a primitive toy compared to the alien-influenced designs of the returning exiles. The Voidborn ships were organic curves and crystalline structures that pulsed with energy patterns that hurt to look at. Directly, Marcus opened a communication channel to Earth's surface and spoke in a voice that carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in battles across the galaxy. His words were carefully chosen to convey both his peaceful intentions and his absolute determination to protect Earth from the approaching Devourer threat. He requested permission to establish diplomatic contact with Earth's leaders, and to begin sharing the technology that would be needed for the coming war. General Sarah Reynolds stood in the Global Defense Council's war room and studied the tactical displays that showed the Voidborn fleet's capabilities. Her military analysts confirmed that the returning exiles possessed weapons and defensive systems that were centuries ahead of Earth's technology. If they chose to conquer rather than protect, Earth would have no chance of resistance. The first face-to-face meeting took place aboard a neutral station that the Voidborn constructed in Earth's orbital space within hours of their arrival. Marcus Chen walked into the meeting chamber accompanied by his senior officers, and Alina gasped at her first sight of what humanity had become during their exile. The Voidborn were still recognizably human, but their genetic modifications had given them abilities that bordered on the supernatural. Marcus stood nearly 7 feet tall, with silver-flecked eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. His movements were fluid and precise in ways that suggested enhanced reflexes and muscle control. Dr. Zara Okafor, his chief science officer, displayed similar modifications along with cranial ridges that indicated significant brain augmentation. The Voidborn had not just survived their exile, but had evolved into something that transcended their original human limitations. Alina found herself struggling to comprehend the casual displays of enhanced ability as the Voidborn delegation demonstrated their capabilities. Marcus lifted a steel table with one hand while discussing defensive strategies, and Dr. Okafor processed complex mathematical calculations in her head faster than Earth's computers could perform the same operations. The genetic modifications that had once frightened Earth's leaders had created a branch of humanity that was perfectly adapted to survive in hostile environments. The diplomatic negotiations proceeded with careful formality as both sides tried to bridge the gap created by 3 millennia of separation. Marcus explained that the Voidborn had encountered dozens of alien species during their exile and had formed alliances with many of them. Their technology was a fusion of human innovation and alien science that had been refined through countless battles and explorations. General Reynolds presented Earth's military capabilities and was shocked to learn that the Voidborn considered Earth's entire defense grid to be inadequate against even a small devourer scouting force. The approaching alien empire possessed weapons that could crack planets in half and defensive systems that could withstand the detonation of entire stars. Conventional warfare would be utterly useless against such overwhelming technological superiority. Dr. Okafor shared holographic displays of the Devourer fleet that the Voidborn had been tracking across the galaxy. The images showed massive ships, the size of small moons, accompanied by swarms of smaller vessels that moved through space like a living organism. The Devourers had consumed hundreds of star systems over the past millennium, leaving behind only empty space and the broken remains of dead worlds. Alina learned that the Devourers were not simply conquerors, but a species that had evolved to consume all forms of energy and matter in the universe. They treated other civilizations as nothing more than fuel for their endless expansion, and they possessed the technological capability to harvest entire solar systems. The approaching fleet represented only a small portion of their total forces, but it was still large enough to sterilize the entire galaxy if left unchecked. Marcus revealed that the Voidborn had spent centuries preparing for this confrontation. Their entire civilization had been organized around the goal of developing weapons and strategies that could stop the Devourer advance. They had studied the remains of destroyed civilizations, analyzed Devourer technology, and formed alliances with other species that had survived previous attacks. The meeting was interrupted by urgent communications from the Voidborn fleet as their long-range sensors detected unexpected activity in the outer solar system. The Devourer advance scouts had arrived ahead of schedule and were already beginning their systematic analysis of Earth's defenses. The time for preparation had run out, and the war for humanity's survival was about to begin. Captain Torres volunteered to lead a joint reconnaissance mission with Voidborn ships to assess the enemy forces. Her crew would be the first Earthborn humans to work directly alongside the genetic exiles, and the mission would test whether the two branches of humanity could cooperate effectively in combat situations. Marcus activated his fleet's battle protocols and watched as Voidborn ships transformed from exploration vessels into weapons of war. Their hulls reconfigured themselves into optimal combat shapes, and weapon systems that had been hidden during the diplomatic meeting revealed themselves as the ships prepared for battle. The Voidborn had learned from their encounters with hostile species that peaceful intentions meant nothing if they could not be backed up with overwhelming force. Alina monitored the communications between Earth and the Voidborn fleet as both sides prepared for the first contact with Devourer forces. The returning exiles shared tactical data that would allow Earth's military to coordinate their attacks effectively, while Earth's leaders provided detailed information about the planet's defensive capabilities and civilian population centers. The first Devourer probe ship materialized at the edge of the solar system and immediately began transmitting data back to the main fleet. The alien vessel was unlike anything that either Earth or the Voidborn had ever encountered, appearing to be constructed from living metal that shifted and changed as it moved through space. Its very presence seemed to drain energy from the surrounding area, causing nearby asteroids to crumble into dust. Dr. Okafor analyzed the probe's emissions and discovered that the Devourers were already beginning to prepare the solar system for consumption. The probe was releasing microscopic organisms that would gradually break down planetary atmospheres and convert solid matter into forms that the main fleet could more easily harvest. Earth had perhaps weeks before the process would become irreversible. Marcus made the decision that would define humanity's future. The Voidborn fleet would engage the Devourer probe immediately, even though doing so would reveal their capabilities to the enemy. The alternative was to allow the solar system to be prepared for harvesting, which would doom Earth regardless of any future military victories. The battle began as Voidborn ships materialized around the alien probe using their dimensional shifting technology. Their weapons fired streams of energy that seemed to tear holes in space itself, while their defenses absorbed the probe's counterattacks with casual efficiency. The engagement lasted only minutes, but it demonstrated that humanity had finally evolved into a species that could fight back against cosmic predators. Alina watched the tactical displays as the Devourer probe was destroyed, its alien technology proving insufficient against the combined might of human ingenuity and genetic evolution. The victory was small compared to what was coming, but it proved that the children of Earth had returned with the power to protect their ancestral home.